When you're working in the timeline in Resolve, there are a few little things that can kind of get you. These are some of the most common problems that I run into and I see people run into in the timeline in Resolve. One of the most common problems is having the audio come out of only one ear.
Go check it out.
Like that. The reason for that is usually because we have a mono audio clip on a stereo track. You can tell this is a stereo track because it says 2.0 there, and when you mouse over it, it says stereo. If you right click on the empty space and go down to change track mono and switch this to 1.0, now it will play that back.
Go check it out.
Reasonably. So if you run into trouble with the audio channels, that will help you. Another thing that people run into is not being able to just adjust the audio or the video tracks separately. Or maybe you want to move things together, but they keep being separate. The answer to that is this linked selection button right here. Make sure to have that on if you want the audio and video to move together, and have it off if you want them to be separate. And what happens a lot is if you select the edge of it, you go like this and you go, oh, that's not what I wanted. And then you go over here and you uncheck the link selection and you're like, now it should work, but it doesn't. It keeps moving them both. The reason for that is because you have them both selected right now. So you have to click in the empty space and then reselect just one of them. Another thing that will happen is, let's say we want to get rid of this audio and we select it and hit delete. That'll delete both the video and the audio, which is of course not what you want. So again, make sure your link selection is off. Then you can just select your audio to get rid of it. The other part of this is backspace and delete do different things. On Mac, it's the delete that is above the backslash versus the little delete that's kind of right by home and end and page down and those kind of things. The little delete will take a clip and it will get rid of the clip, but it will also move all of the other clips around it to kind of get rid of that gap. If you select something and just hit backspace, it will get rid of it without moving everything down. And so if things are acting strange, like, oh yeah, I just want to get rid of this, and like, I didn't want any of that, it's because you're hitting the little delete button instead of backspace. Another big thing that gets people is if you have a track locked, if you go over to the headers for these tracks, there's a little lock icon and it'll put this little checkerboard over your track. That means you can select things, but you can't really move anything around. You can't put a new clip on the track. It just doesn't work. So make sure that you have whatever you're trying to work with unlocked. You'll also have problems with these little buttons here, the auto track selector. If that's not selected, sometimes whatever you're trying to do in the track won't happen, because this button is basically let this track do fancy stuff. And if it's on, it kind of acts as normal. And if it's off, weird things happen. So without going into all the details about it, make sure that's on if you're having troubles, both in the audio and the video. If you're trying to, say, trim something really finely, sometimes you'll grab the edge of it and you're like, oh, I just want it to be in between here and there. Why is it doing that? That's because snapping is on. And so up here with this little magnet, if it's white, snapping is on. And so if you take it off, then you can have really fine control and it won't snap to the edges of things. This gets me all the time. In fact, a lot of the time, if I'm dragging this, I've forgotten to set it to snap or not snap. And while you're dragging, you can hit N on the keyboard and it will temporarily turn on or off snapping for just what you're doing and then turn it back to where it was. That's really great if you just mostly want it to snap, but every once in a while you just want to do something really easy like that. You can just quickly hit N while you're dragging things. The last major gotcha on the edit page is if you're playing stuff back and you're like, why can't I hear it? Why can't I hear the audio? It's because it's muted. So over here on the right-hand side, there's this little audio control. Make sure that this is on so that you can actually hear what's going on. There's also this volume here. This is not the volume for your output. This is how loud your speakers or headphones are. This is how loud you're listening to it. So if you turn this way down, it's not going to make your movie actually quieter. It's just going to turn the volume of your speakers down. So make sure this is at 0 and this is unmuted. And this little button dim, if this is turned yellow, what that basically does is it turns the volume down so that it's not quite as loud. And that's so that you can just quickly listen to it at different levels. But if you have that selected, everything will be really quiet. So make sure to have that all the way up if you're trying to actually listen to your audio at the normal volume. So there's a bunch of troubleshooting for the timeline in the edit page.